Trip plans serve three key functions: structuring how we think through the risks of a climb or trip, coordinating with teammates, and leaving information with a loved one not on the trip to communicate to search and rescue should we ever be so unfortunate as to need that help. Let's talk about what's in my trip plans. Hello again, I'm Jason. If I'm doing something unfamiliar and so need to go through the planning process to really think through timing and gear, I might make a detailed trip plan. If the objective is complex, so there is an imperative to get the team on the same page, I likely will make a detailed trip plan. If I have a relatively unfamiliar climbing partner, then the need to get on the same page similarly increases. So I don't always make a detailed trip plan, but let's talk through the components I will build into a plan for something more complex than a day climb, but less complex than an expedition, which has its own robust planning needs. Maybe you'll find some elements you'd like to include in your plans and become clearer about elements you don't feel you need. For this case study, we're planning a climb of a moderate mixed couloir with 2 technical steps that are sometimes soloed and sometimes pitched out. We're adding in an overnight camp before and after the summit push. When I make a plan like this, I always start with an itinerary, planning where we need to be by when on the mountain. And I always start with the summit bit. I want the rest of the plan to set up the team for our ideal summit push, so by planning that push first, I can then back into the approach and exit that lead up to and come out of that push. So, in this case, I am starting with day 2. Most summit bids have some sort of time constraint. We want to be off the mountain before things warm up too much, or afternoon storms move in. Or maybe we want to start the technical climbing right around the time we have a little light. In essence, I want to do the technical climbing under what is likely to be the best conditions. So that is the time of day I want to set first. To know that, I need to estimate the duration of technical climbing. So, mapping software allows me to plot the route and evaluate the distance and vertical gain. For the snow climbing portion, I need to estimate, from my previous experiences of my and the team's pace, the vertical gain per hour we will achieve. And I also need to estimate the time we will spend on the technical pitches, given the need to rope up, transition into and out of pitch climbing, and the like. Once I have a duration estimate, I can place that duration into the time of day I want for that climbing. Now I need to factor in the time we need to gear up at the start of the couloir and the approach from the camp to the couloir base. Again, mapping the approach gives me the relevant metrics, and the miles or kilometers per hour I typically travel over flatter ground will help with these timing estimates. Now, continuing to plan backwards, we need time to wake up, go to the bathroom, eat, and the like. So we've got a wake-up time that allows for that. We can factor in some time to hang out on the summit, and then plan the descent. If it looks like the descent time gets us back to camp too late, then I can iterate and start the climbing earlier. In this case, we should be back in camp before our area's afternoon thunderstorms typically move in. Now I need to help myself and my teammates pack the right clothing, bring the right tent and temperature-rated sleeping bag, and the like. So we need to focus on weather. Of course, the temperature on the summit is relevant for all of this. And I also know that the temperature goes up about 3 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet lower of elevation. That's about 1 2/3 degrees Celsius for every 300 meters. So once we have our plan's topographic map, which is coming, we will know what the temperature will be at the summit and at camp. Now I add in the feels like temperature. Basically, this is wind chill and humidity adjusted so that we can know what exposed skin might be feeling in colder temperatures or consider the breathability of our clothing in warmer temperatures. We want to know the likelihood of precipitation for planning clothing and potentially traction if we are worried about snow coming down or rain falling onto a rock route. Again, we can move our itinerary around to beat precipitation if we have to. Next, I will add in cloud cover. I use this to think about sun protection. On snow, we can get an awful lot of reflection that can feel incredibly hot, even hotter than the feels like temperature. Or the cloud cover can make things feel cooler. Do I need a lot of sunscreen? Face shields? The amount of sun all factors into this. I want to know how much wind we will have, and the weather site I use forecasts both sustained wind and gusts. Again, this can dramatically change the climbing conditions. High winds can make things unclimbable. even with moderate temperatures. The direction of wind can feel much cooler when in our face than when at our back due to our pack blocking the wind. And given that this example is a summertime climb, I'm worried about lightning where I live. So, a forecast of lightning potential is another potential factor that could move up the time I need to be off an exposed climb or approach, or it could rule out climbing altogether. Now we need that topographic map I mentioned earlier that covers the day's travels. I can see that altitude of camp, but also visualize the route and surrounding topography. We did an entire video of how topographic maps help me plan bail routes and recognize terrain features so that I can quickly orient while on the climb. There's a link to that video in the description. If our safety would benefit from additional data, I will add in photos of the climb or important visuals of key components like this switchback on the descent that, if missed, could lead to our being cliffed out. Okay, having the planned itinerary for summit day, I now can continue to backplan our arrival day to give us the right opportunity to rest prior to the summit push. The steps are mostly the same. I need the itinerary planned so that we can get into camp with time to set up, eat, and relax. I need weather data, and I need a map. But I also want to factor in our transit to the trailhead. In this case, we are meeting at a midway point from everyone's home locations, and so I add the location for the meetup based on giving us time to drive to the trailhead, gear up, and make our hike into camp. Like before, the vertical gain and linear distance data helps me estimate the time it will take to hike in. We still have the third day's hike out. Again, I want to plan the itinerary to avoid any weather hazards, so back to the car before the storms typically arrive. So, more weather data, and we already have the map from day 1 that is the same terrain. There are 2 more elements I will add into the plan. I want to organize gear, making sure everyone is bringing the personal gear they need, and making sure that shared gear like the climbing ropes or a tent or stove and fuel are accounted for and everyone knows who is responsible for bringing what. Finally, I will add in the contact information for the emergency services that have jurisdiction in the area. That could be a park service or a sheriff's office or similar. This is mostly for our loved ones not going on the trip. If we need emergency services in the field and are not incapacitated, we're going to use the SOS feature on our device. But if we simply are 6 hours late or something from getting back in contact with our loved ones, and no one has heard from us, our loved ones need to know who to contact and to whom they should relay this trip plan. So, there is a pretty detailed trip plan, as I would create one for a moderately complex trip. Are there components you would add? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share if you want to support us. For more information, you can go to our website at www.shortguysbetaworks.com. You can watch that video I mentioned about the planning benefits, not just navigation benefits, of making a topographic map, or you can check out our entire rock climbing safety series. We'll see you next week and keep on getting more out of that big outside.